Shrimad Bhagavad Gita, the live classroom begins today with the verse number 27-28, chapter 5. We embark upon an altogether different journey today than the one which we have been traversing up to verse number 26. The beatitude of the traditional ancient Indian wisdom writings, the scripture, goes into another dimension where we observe the last part of the ending chapter as a kind of an introduction to the one that is about to begin. Henceforth, verse number 27 and 28 are an indicator as a welcome gesture to the chapter number 6 of Shrimad Bhagavad Gita. Probably the justice cannot be done to these two verses in one live classroom. And for a major reason, that the esoteric understanding that we draw from these two verses needs some time for its deeper assimilation. We have to contemplate and make ourselves understand certain deeper aspects. Bhagavad Gita is a scripture which was bestowed by a divine echo to one of the greatest masters of all time, Muni Ved Vyas. And the divine echo has been assigned as Lord Krishna. When a great master like Ved Vyas, the one whom we term as Rishi, when they script something in language, each and every single word carries an esoteric understanding. It is embedded with a special stream of science. The difference between a poet and an ordinary usage of words by commoner is that the poet rearranges the words in such a manner to give it a special significance. And those common words of ordinary usage become special and specific by merely assigned to an arrangement by a poet. Likewise, when it comes to the great seers, the great masters of ancient times, they also deploy and use the ordinary words to become as flag bearers for deep esoteric understandings behind them. I'm not going to have the pronunciation of the words as such in the form of a mantra, but yes, I shall pick up one word at a time in order to give it an assignage. The thick understanding that comes out of this particular verse is that if we focus between our eyebrows, at the center of the eyebrow, we lead towards a deeper meditation. But before that, concluding to that thick understanding, there is a lot more that needs to be conveyed. And that we find here in the first line in these few words. As they say, sparshan kritva bahi bhayyan, which means detach or relinquish all and every impact that intrudes from without. Relinquish all and every impact that intrudes without. Here, without has a very deep understanding which is not a negation, because this word, when we use it in spiritual parlance, has not to be taken as a negation at all times. It's there to refer something which is outside. It says that when we transact any and every business of our life, we generally transact by coming in contact, by coming in communion with all and every aspect in our life. What are those all and every aspect that create impact, they come from thoughts, they come from desires, they come from imagination, they come from food and all other physical moves, I can write it. All physical moves. All these fall under the parlance of our contact. Sparshan, the word sparsh means coming in contact. Touch. This word, this entire world is a business for a human under the spell of touch and feel. You touch something and you feel it. What is the touch? The feel that we draw is in the form of experience that we give ourselves. But what is touch? Sparsh means touch, coming in contact. It's a broader term is contact, but primarily the word is touch. Does the touch merely confine its limit to something that we feel through our skin, through our entire body, or does it go beyond? Yes, the understanding of touch also exceeds towards anything and everything that we come in contact through eyes. Anything and everything that we come through our nose in the form of odor. Anything and everything that we come in contact with our tongue. Anything and everything that we come in contact through our ears. And of course, by the way of our skin as well. So touch has a broader spectrum to understand, which exceeds more than that. Not only at the physical realm of sensory organs that have been assigned to experience touch, but apart from that, even within our own existence, within our own brain, within our own mind, we experience the same touch. When we are experiencing a particular thought, it's a kind of a touch. When we are experiencing an urge inside in the form of a desire, that's a touch. When we are on a contemplation upon an imagination, it's a touch. And of course, yes, the food and other physical moves also comprise as a realm of touch. The realms of touch are broad. The realms of touch / contact are broad. They are very broad. And that must be understood. I started by saying that we may not suffice to conclude these two verses in one live classroom. We have to stretch them into two, because an introduction is mandatory to pave way for an understanding that shall later absorb the technique which has been given in these two verses. So one has to give oneself a prelude of format inside by which we can absorb the technique that shall be bestowed in the second classroom. And we started by understanding the realms of touch. The realms of touch exceed the transactions that we dispense through the sensory organs. They exceed and they go through even the subtle movements within our own mind in the form of thought, desire, imagination. Any and every move, relinquish all and every impact that intrudes without, which means that the realm of without for the sake of touch is not confined to sensory organs. It also means any and every happening at the end of the mind. Anything that happens at the end of the mental plane comes under the realm of the without. Without means outside. So outside would also comprise and include thought, desires and imagination that we experience at the end of the mental plane. The verse starts by saying, detach yourself, relinquish, put them at bay. All and every impacts, impulses that we experience in the form of touch, whether they are through sensory organs or whether they are at the end of the mental plane in form of thoughts, desires and imagination. Why? Why does it suggest to relinquish all kinds of touch and feel at the end of sensory drivers in physical and at the mental plane? Why does it want us to relinquish that? For a particular reason, which has been mentioned here in the second line of the same verse by the term pranapano samau kritva. The entire human existence is a spell, a voyage, a connivance, a dance, an interplay of different kinds of biocurrents. This is a very thick term I am deploying to address the word which is called generally as prana. Our great masters of the unknown times have been able to decipher these biocurrents of 10 kinds. Majorly, the two major ones are prana and apana. APANA. These are two kinds of different currents. The energy circuitry that this body is absolutely encompassed within. This body is a structure of these energy circuitry where we have two major currents flowing by the name prana and apana. Although the great masters have deciphered the number to 10, but yet we shall not go much deeper into that understanding and confine ourselves to prana apana, because here it has been said prana panau samau kritva. Everything is related. It may appear to you that we were talking about something regarding touch and feel and relinquishing all touch and feel without at the end of the mental plane and through sensory organs, and immediately we have drifted and embarked upon a different understanding of energy and prana. No, everything is absolutely interconnected. Why? Because when we experience any kind of a touch, all realms of touch, all realms of contact, be it on the sensory organs through sensory drivers or at the end of the mental plane through thoughts, desires, imagination, everything has a reaction. Everything has an expenditure of energy to experience anything by sensory drivers, expenditure of energy to experience a thought, desire or imagination. Any activity of all kinds that we dispense mandates for an expenditure of energy or prana. Prana has to be spent. The primary requisite of fuel for any activity to trigger is prana. And when we trigger prana, like any other automobile vehicle, if you experience, when you burn fuel, when you burn ignition, there is an emission at the same time. When you run your engine, you cannot do it devoid of any kind of emission. The emission levels can be regulated more or less, but some emission is mandatory. Likewise, when we experience the realms of touch of all kinds, now you have to understand the realms is a small word. Touch has a larger meaning, has a larger understanding that it encompasses. So when you experience any kinds of the realm of touch, there is an expenditure of energy which is termed as prana. At the same time, there is an emission which is called as apana. When you have to utilize energy, the incoming breath is the prana, but when it departs along with certain emittents, that emittent is under the category of apana. And these two make the entire voyage of a human existence move further. All activities that we do in the realms of touch are possible because we intake prana and we exhale, or we relinquish, or the apana departs. This embarks and this disembarks with all that emittance that we release from our body. But at the same time, what happens is activity no doubt goes on. We are there to think, imagine, contemplate, assimilate food, make physical movements, everything. The brain is able to exercise all of its potentials. The memory, retrieval of the memory, storage of different facts that we observe, everything goes on smooth. Why? Because there is an incoming energy that fuels it. At the same time, there is an excretion also through apana. But when all this happens, there is a turbulation going on. The turbulation at the end of the mental plane goes on for any activity. No engine can run without friction. Erosion is mandatory. No tire can run upon a road without friction. The tire also has to get its layers depleted. Everything is born to friction and erosion. Obviously, when you generate any kind of energy, there is a depletion at the same time. There is an erosion at the same time. You cannot avoid it. Likewise, in the normal parlance of human existence, all realms of touch, when you have to experience them in any plane, whether mental plane or physical, the prana and apana, the incoming and the emittance, you cannot be out of that. Whereas, under these two lines, I'm not taking the first line conclusively because that shall be taken in the second lecture, in the second live classroom. I'm confining myself to the first part of the first line and the second line. Nasa abhyantar charino, within these two nostrils. It means within these two nostrils. The energy by the name prana and apana is running between these two nostrils. The great master is here instructing to bring these two at an equilibrium. An equanimity and equipoise has to be instilled at the end of the prana and apana. Both the currents have to come to a state of equanimity. Does it mean that if I intake 1 kg, I must also emit 1 kg? Or what does it mean? What does it want to convey? The term samau means with equanimity and equipoise of both the currents of the prana and apana. How does that come? How do we understand that? The two breaths flowing through these two nostrils, the incoming and the outgoing, have to be brought at a balance. What is that? This needs to be understood more. And we are going to continue to probe this further in the second live classroom, which although it's going to be a conclusive one, but I'm leaving this one for merely you to understand. Number one is the realms of touch. We have been instructed under this verse to relinquish all realms of touch. The impacts of all realms of touch. What does touch mean? We have understood it in detail. And the second thing we have understood is that all kinds of touch, they create an inner turbulence by the deployment of prana and apana, because the movement is going to be there and each movement is leaving its own turbulence. And the yogi wants the entire turbulence to be brought at rest. He wants the prana and apana to settle in equanimity. This is what we are leaving here at. In the next classroom, we'll take it forward from here on and then conclude it to the ultimate technique which has been very finely mentioned in these two verses. See you in the next live classroom. We conduct this live program upon Shrimad Bhagavad Gita every second and last Sunday of every month, 9:30 a.m. Till then, keep contemplating. The 6th chapter, because this chapter has got 29 verses. And by 31st of December, we shall probably be embarking upon the 6th chapter. And the 6th chapter onwards, we are ushering with the new practice of providing PDF notes upon each live classroom that shall be conducted over here as a background notes for one that is a sincere seeker in the pursuit of understanding Gita to learn and associate more. We shall be providing links for you to come and gather those notes. Till then, Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Om.